Acts chapter 27. Once it had been decided that we should set sail for Italy, they handed Shaul and some other prisoners over to an officer of the emperor's regiment named Julius. We embarked in a ship from Adramyttium, which was about to sail to the ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and put out to sea, accompanied by Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica. The next day, we landed at Zidon, and Julius considerately allowed Shaul to go visit his friends and receive what he needed. Putting to sea from there, we sailed close to the sheltered side of Cyprus because the winds were against us, then across the open sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, and so we reached Myra and Lycia. There the Roman officer found an Alexandrian vessel sailing to Italy and put us aboard. For a number of days we made little headway, and we arrived off Cnidus only with difficulty. The wind would not let us continue any farther along the direct route, so we ran down along the sheltered side of Crete from Cape Salmone, and continuing to struggle on, hugging the coast, we reached a place called Pleasant Harbor near the town of Lycia. Since much time had been lost and continuing the voyage was risky because it was already past Yom Kippur, Shaul advised them, "Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be a catastrophe, not only with huge losses to the cargo and the ship, but with loss of our lives as well." However, the officer paid more attention to the pilot and the ship's owner than to what Shaul said. Moreover, since the harbor was not well suited to sitting out the winter, the majority reached the decision to sail on from there in the hope of reaching Phoenix, another harbor in Crete, and wintering there, where it is protected from the southwest and northwest. When a gentle southerly breeze began to blow, they thought that they had their goal within grasp, so they raised the anchor and started coasting by Crete close to shore. But before long, there struck us from land a full gale from the northeast, the kind they call an avraculon. The ship was caught up and unable to face the wind, so we gave way to it and were driven along. As we passed into the lee of a small island called Cauda, we managed with strenuous effort to get control of the lifeboat. They hoisted it aboard, then fastened cables tightly around the ship itself to reinforce it. Fearing they might run aground on the Syrtis sandbars, they lowered the topsails and thus continued drifting. But because we were fighting such heavy weather, the next day they began to jettison non-essentials, and the third day they threw the ship's sailing equipment overboard with their own hands. For many days neither the sun nor the stars appeared, while the storm continued to rage, until gradually all hope of survival vanished. It was then, when they had gone a long time without eating, that Shaul stood up in front of them and said, "You should have listened to me and not set out from Crete. If you had, you would have escaped this disastrous loss. But now my advice to you is to take heart, because not one of you will lose his life, only the ship will be lost. For this very night there stood next to me an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve. He said, 'Don't be afraid, Shaul. You have to stand before the emperor. Look, God has granted you all those who are sailing with you. So, men, take heart, for I trust God and believe that what I've been told will come true. Nevertheless, we have to run aground on some island.' It was the 14th night, and we were still being driven about in the Adriatic Sea, when around midnight the sailors sensed that we were nearing land. So they dropped a plumb line and found the water 120 feet deep. A little farther on, they took another sounding and found it 90 feet. Fearing we might run on the rocks, they let out 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight to come. At this point, the crew made an attempt to abandon ship. They lowered the lifeboat into the sea, pretending that they were about to let out some anchors from the bow. Shaul said to the officer and the soldiers, "Unless these men remain aboard ship, you yourselves cannot be saved." Then the soldiers cut the ropes holding the lifeboat and let it go. Just before daybreak, Shaul urged them all to eat saying, "Today is the 14th day you have been in suspense, going hungry, eating nothing. Therefore I advise you to take some food. You need it for your own survival, for not one of you will lose so much as a hair from his head." When he had said this, he took bread, said the barakah to God in front of everyone, broke it, and began to eat. With courage restored, they all ate some food themselves. Altogether, there were 276 of us on board the ship. After they had eaten all they wanted, they lightened the ship by dumping the grain into the sea. When day broke, they didn't recognize the land, but they noticed a bay with a sand beach where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. So they cut away the anchors and left them in the sea. At the same time, they loosened the ropes that held the rudders out of the water. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and headed for the beach. But they encountered a place where two currents meet and ran the vessel aground on the sandbar there. The bow stuck and would not move, while the pounding of the surf began to break up the stern. At this point, the soldiers' thought was to kill the prisoners so that none of them would swim off and escape. But the officer, wanting to save Shaul, kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to throw themselves overboard first and head for shore, and the rest to use planks or whatever they could find from the ship. Thus it was that everyone reached land safely.